Hi, welcome back to the Watch Insider. My name is Brian. This is Tim. And thank you guys for logging on. We have a fun show tonight. We have lots of fun picks from the vault, lots of cool, interesting things for you guys to see. And we're going to talk a little bit about some recent watch news that just hit today. So getting us started right off the bat, Tim, why don't you give us a show of what's on the wrist tonight?
Okay. The watch you know well from the banner on our homepage, Watchbox Studios on YouTube. It's my Dual-Met chronograph, mono pusher, twin movement in a single case with a single regulator. This is the 2010 limited edition of 200 in white gold. I have to say, as much fun as the dial side is, and that foudroyant is stunning, the watch is actually more fun when you tip it over and you look at the guts of the movement. Twin barrels, twin drivetrains, two calibers, one beating heart, and yes, if it looks a little bit like a Lange, that's because it is German silver or Maishur. Untreated, beautifully golden, twin mainspring barrels, and rayon coat.
Beautiful piece. I love the white gold against the black.
My dream watch, and still my dream watch after I bought it. 4 years later.
Did we take one of these in recently?
I think we might have.
I think you single-handedly raised the value, the secondhand value of this watch.
Well, I own 0.5% of the global production, so I'm kind of working on a corner.
You're hedging your bet.
I'm cornering the market slowly.
So today I am wearing, so this is not actually my watch, but it's a watch that I am taking for a test run and seriously thinking about. So I've been on, here I'll let Tim show it so it's a little closer to the camera. So I've been on the hunt for a Reverso for a while now. And this is a watch that we recently took in. It is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Tribute to 1931 with the Rouge dial. So for those that don't know, they've made this watch with a Rouge lacquer dial like you see here. They made it with a green lacquer dial, which was a limited edition to the London boutique, if I'm not mistaken. And they've also done a limited edition with a blue lacquer dial that has an engraving on the back. What's the engraving on the back, Tim?
Wait, you're talking about the blue lacquer?
The blue lacquer.
Okay, that's the Rio de Janeiro Christ the Redeemer special edition. The conventional blue is actually a duo.
So, but isn't there a blue lacquered piece that's similar to this in design?
There is, but that one's actually a duo. It's got a second dial on the other side. That one came out in 2013. This one right here was a 2012. Although it's not a limited edition, it is limited production. It's been estimated there are between 300 and 400 of these. And I'll even say with the applied white gold indices and the hands, this is the rare tribute watch that actually surpasses the original. I've seen the original from the Heritage Gallery. It's nowhere near as appealing as this. And Brian actually has this one on a Casafagliano strap. Very, very Gucci.
So yeah, so I love the, I love the design of the strap and the way that it, almost makes the watch a little bit more casual. I love the funkiness of the dial. I feel like if you're going to have, a Reverso, it's nice that it's a talking piece. I'm really looking forward that if I do decide to pick it up, having the back engraved with something special. I think that's one of the most underappreciated, aspects of a Reverso is having it engraved on the back. And, it used to be that you really had to send it off to Jaeger to have the specialty engraving done. But now you have more and more, I would say, gun engravers that you can find on Instagram that are now engraving other things that are getting more into the watch game mix. And I think that if you do a little bit of research, you can find a truly skilled artisan that can do something really special in the back that's not going to take necessarily as long a time as the brand, but can also do some pretty unique things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, gun engravers, they could do a little bit of unconventional work on the steel caseback. Even the option of getting some enamel work done rather than a simple engraving. If you go with enamel, if you go with lacquering. Remember, Douglas MacArthur had the original Reverso, and he actually had his initials engraved and then lacquered. It's a unique look. It went for a lot of money at auction. You can still achieve it. Don't underestimate the single-sided Reversos, because that backside becomes a personalization canvas that could be literally anything the imagination can sustain.
So this is actually the watch that I was referring to, and it's going to be hard to get a picture on the screen.
Oh, that's a duo.
This is a duo? It is a duo. Look at that. You do know something about JLC.
Just a little bit.
Wow. So that happens to be a very cool piece. But again, you were correct, because we were having the conversation. You can't have it engraved because it's a duo.
There is, like I said, there is a Brazil Boutique limited series that actually has Christ the Redeemer, the statue, engraved on the back, so it's already been customized, and dare I say it might be sacrilegious to have that laser welded for purpose of removing the image. So you're kind of set in stone. If you want a blue lacquered Reverso and you want to engrave it, you're going to have to go vintage and find one.
Yeah. So the only other thing that I was thinking is, I'm thinking that the Classique might be a better size for my wrist. And that's the only trepidation that I'm having, that this might be just a hair too big for how a Reverso should fit.
The one thing that case has going for it that makes it a bit tough to wear across a narrower wrist is that it is very long and flat. It's 7 millimeters, about 7.3 millimeters thick, but it's broad. The XGT case that came out with the original Septante is thicker but shorter across the wrist. I would say the best way to go is actually to find the original Grand Tie case, 42 millimeters lug to lug, find one that's single-sided, find a dial that you like, find a metal that you like, and have that personalized. It's the perfect watch for guys like you and me who have like a normal size wrist.
So, quick question from the chat from Tony Ryan 44. Give us one prediction from Basel this year from Rolex. Predictions can be fun even if they never come into fruition. So, I mean, there's been I'd say the big prevailing predictions, number one, time for the anniversary Submariner to be retired. It's just about the 7-year mark, which I think is how long the predecessor was out for. So the real question is they've slowed down shipments. Everybody has seen the Hulk go up in value. Is now the time that the watch is going to be discontinued and they come out with another anniversary piece. Second big rumor, Coke bezel GMT. They have the Batman. They had the Pepsi white gold Submariner. When's a Coke coming out already? Everybody's sort of calling for that. And for me, what would be absolutely amazing, I don't think that it's necessarily going to happen, but one can hope, is that they put the Sky Dweller movement in the Day-Date 41 case. So a little bit thinner Sky Dweller, personally a little bit more comfortable for somebody with a smaller wrist. And, I think it would make for a great case for that complication.
I'm going to say that one of the following gets retired. Right now, Rolex has a lot of 39, 40 millimeter time-only watch in the catalog, and closely coupled, I should say, some of you have been taking exception to my pronunciation of that, closely coupled in price. I think with the Explorer 1, the Air King, the Oyster Perpetual 39, and the Milgauss, you have 4 watches that pretty much serve the same marketplace. Now, individual dials within that selection can vary dramatically, but I think that's a lot of product overlap, and Rolex plans everything to a fault. I think they're going to look at that part of the catalog and say it's a bit crowded. One of those watches, in my opinion, will be retired, and I actually think there's a better than even chance that it might be the Milgauss.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's slowed down of late. They've done a lot of work in revamping Daytona recently. I think that, they've probably, after last year coming out with the Oyster Flex, they're going to move on to something else. They've done a complete revamp of the traditional Datejust in terms of sizes, movements, replacing the, traditional, Day-Date 2 with the Day-Date 41. So they've given that attention. And now I think that, it's time for, as you said, the Milgauss or another one of these watches is probably due for some love.
I think at a bare minimum, you're going to see the retirement of some sort of special variant, either the Deep Sea D Blue or the Milgauss Z Blue. Those are outliers in Rolex's catalog. They're weird and wacky and wonderful because they prove to be the exception of the rule, but I also think Rolex knows that you can't let them run too far, and they would rather cut them off young than let them play out the string and grow stale. Both of those watches are still fairly scarce as things go. I think Rolex would probably rather call time, especially on the Deep Sea. I'm not sure where the Deep Sea sits in the catalog now that the Sea Dweller 43 is out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you had, a situation where for a lot of customers that wanted a bigger watch, the sub was too small. The Deep Sea was just a little bit too big, and they wanted something that sat sort of in between. Then they came out with the Sea Dweller 4000, and it sort of still only satisfied those individuals that wanted a sub. So they came out with the Sea Dweller Deep Sea at 43 millimeters to sit somewhere in between. So, if they get rid of the Deep Blue, again, is it a possibility? Of course. I just don't know what they replace it with.
Yeah. I would say we're going to see the Deep Sea go away in the next model year or two, and I think one of those 4 from the time-only 39, 40 millimeter size are going to be retired. As far as a Coke bezel, look, let me be honest with you guys. I don't think that's happening until they launch the next generation GMT. I can't think of a better way to get headlines than to launch a new generation GMT with a Coke bezel. I think you're going to see one of two things. You're going to see the next generation GMT launch in steel with a Pepsi bezel, or you're going to see something along the lines of the current BLRO, the white gold Pepsi bezel, maybe with a Coke. I do think it's unusual, though, to expect Rolex to launch a new model in steel. They usually launch precious metal first, and then in the second or third model year after the new model debut, they launch steel.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you know, the only other thing I would also look at, you know, there should be a price increase coming any day. I mean, again, don't take it from me. I honestly have no idea. I'm just, you know, it's about, you know, they're due for a price increase. You know, the watches have gone sky high. You know, demand is crazy. And, you know, with Basel World approaching, I think that, you know, tomorrow or March 1st would be the two dates in which they would have the price increase if they were going to do it, you know, before Basel World.
That's a fact. We'll find out. We'll find out in due time. Okay, so let's talk about the hardware.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So I picked some great pieces from the vault. I will get us started off with this piece right here. We'll end with the big finale.
The fireworks.
So this right here, I will have Tim show it up, is a discontinued 42 millimeter ceramic diver. So this particular watch from Audemars Piguet, while not technically a boutique-only watch, was pretty much only sold through their boutique network. Some of them did matriculate out to the authorized dealer network, but it was only very few. So for all intents and purposes, it can be considered a boutique-only piece. What's so special about this watch, in my opinion, is number one, the color scheme is absolutely beautiful. Number two, they were extremely scarce. Number three, I much prefer the ceramic over the forged carbon, both for, you know, look and durability purposes. This particular example of the watch happens to be in great condition. We recently took it in pre-owned, and I would say we see very, very few of them. This is probably the first one that we've taken in a few years.
It's true. If you consider that the ceramic diver was going to be the minority of production, and then that was even split between white and black ceramic, this is a watch that is seen uncommon. This is a watch that is colorful. This is a watch where the color is completely consistent with the spirit of the model. There are some watches like the Milgauss where you see that Z blue dial, you're like, oh my goodness, that's a little different. Here you're like, yeah, that works. The white, the black, the orange. It's functional because it makes the bezel and the minute hand in particular exceptionally recognizable at a glance, but it's also sensational because the offshore has always been a little bit audacious, a little bit of a rebel. It doesn't feel like the prim and proper mid-century dress watches that built AP's reputation in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and we actually love it for that. Is it a bit of a monster? Yes, but it's a monster with outstanding manners, and one of the features I always call attention to when I show one of these ceramic APs is that you get the same level of finishing, the quality of the mirrored bevels, the quality of the satin-grained tops and flanks, and you get it rendered in ceramic, the same amount of hand finishing, the same amount of time, and it's also a lot less forgiving than finishing steel, so there's a high rejection rate if something fractures or if something chips. So you get the same level of finish with a level of durability such that if I were to polish this down with a microfiber cloth, all of the little swirls and scuffs that you think you see would disappear. They're literally nothing more than hand oils. Plus, post-2014, you get to see your caliber 3120.
Exactly. You have the sapphire crystal case back there, which I think for a lot of customers that are spending this sort of money on a watch is a must-have. You know, traditionally on a diver, they have closed backs really for diving purposes. Obviously, if you want to dive with a watch, you really, they can go deeper with a closed back. But that being said, I don't think most customers are diving with this watch. And what I really like about this watch too is that it's very wearable at the 42 millimeter size. And you don't generally see ceramic in the divers. You see them more in the 44 millimeter pieces, which are a lot bigger. And I really think a completely different look. And we can try this bad boy on. Both Tim and I have pretty small wrists.
Yep.
I'll give this a quick try on so you guys can see, what it looks like on a wrist that's, a little bit shy of 7 inches. And, I probably would need it on a short strap. I'm on the smallest hole. And there's not many, of the offshores that I can wear. It's probably even a little too big. What do you think?
Honestly, I think it fits decently. You're not going to want a diver to strangle you because you're likely to wear it during periods of activity, also in hot weather. This is a Miami Beach watch.
It's hard to wear it with a suit, too, because I think it shows big if you're not wearing it with sportier garb.
That's true, but I will say this, it's one of the slimmest offshores because it's time only. It doesn't have the modular chronograph, so it winds up being slim enough that if you want, you can fit it under the cuff of a sport jacket or a blazer. So it has that versatility. And I'll throw this out there. 60-hour power reserve, hand-finished movement, and bidirectional winding if you're used to that unidirectional rotor wobble on a sports watch, because so many use a unidirectional movement, whether or not they're Value 7750 based. This is refined. This is bidirectional. This is that Rolex creaminess, so you don't hear or feel the rotor.
Yeah, this thing is awesome.
Yeah. I got to be honest, if I were buying a ceramic diver, I would probably buy the white ceramic because for me, if you're going with a vacation watch, buy a pure vacation watch. But the black is definitely the sleeker and majority rules. It's the more popular and more in-demand version.
Mm-hmm. What should we pick next?
Well, let's see. We just did a sports watch, so let's do a dress watch. Let's do the consummate dress complication from a company we know and love well.
Beautiful. So this is a watch I'm not sure if I brought it on the show before or not. I may have. So this is a 5396G produced for Tiffany & Co. in 100 examples with a black dial, Breguet numerals, an inverted moon with Tiffany & Co. stamped on the dial. Also on the back, you have the engraved 2008 to 2000 and is it 12 or 13? 2013. So it's 5 years of the new Patek Philippe boutique within Tiffany & Co. in New York. So this watch in the 100 examples was made for Tiffany's best collectors, and I don't believe it was exactly an application piece of sorts, but I'm pretty sure that Patek knew where all of them were going.
Yeah, I don't think there was any mystery as to who was receiving the 100. This is a watch that is sensational for a number of reasons. The combination of the white metal with the black dial is a sensational Patek Philippe tradition, often reserved for the most exceptional pieces. When you add the Breguet-style Arabic numerals, you're actually adding strength to strength, because that's another feature generally reserved for special pieces and special occasion watches. Now, you may notice a subtle distinction here, which is the Tiffany signature at 6 o'clock. But look again, and you'll note that every single station of the hour, plus the leaf hands at center, are loomed. This is a luminescent watch. The ultimate everyday complication in the annual calendar, so you can refer to it for correspondence, dating memos, dating letters, dating emails, and then you get that luminescence. So though it's not a sports watch, it is a versatile watch. Custom case back, beautifully executed. This is based on the caliber 324. This is a watch that, quite frankly, probably sold for retail once to the original owner, and I don't know if any of them have ever sold for retail ever since or will ever see that price point again.
So this watch, actually, I am good friends with the owner that sold it to us. He was not the original owner. We sold the watch to him sealed.
Yes.
He unsealed the watch, wore it. You can see that, you know,
it's been loved.
It's been loved. The watch has not been polished, so this is actually the kind of watch where we've left it unpolished, and we're going to leave it up to the next owner to decide whether or not he wants to have that done.
Hey guys, in case you have any questions about where I stand, take a look at my Duomet.
And this particular Patek, I think, you know, given that it's only been produced in 100 examples, the watch happens to be gorgeous. You know, Tiffany watches have always tended to perform extraordinarily well at auction. I think this is a, you know, not only is it currently known as a very collectible watch, but I think that over time you're going to see that this watch continues to appreciate.
And it's not just a given that a Tiffany special Patek Philippe is going to be a highly collectible piece. You know, people did not necessarily love the T150, which was a much more distinctive and somewhat polarizing design. This was born an instant classic. It's not simply because it's a special occasion Patek, it's because it is a great Patek. Take away the Tiffany signature, that is still a sensational watch.
And I think, you know, Patek did come out with this particular watch in the anthracite dial with the Breguet numerals. Now, it didn't have the inverted moon, but I definitely think that decision was made, I'm sure, in part to the success of this watch. Given how close it does look in appearance, that the success of this watch and the popularity of that watch, this watch, translates down into the current version that's made.
But make no mistake, guys, if you're looking to buy the ultimate Patek Philippe annual calendar, this is pretty close. If that anthracite dial is 90 proof, this is 100 proof right here.
And to put it in perspective, this watch, the current retail of this watch, this watch is $48,000, and with this particular dial, configuration, it's a $130,000 watch.
Okay, so we got a lot of fun stuff on the table. Let's answer some questions coming through. Okay, so comments coming through. Right now, Eddie Landsberg's asking, who makes movements for Tiffany's watches? Aside from the period when Swatch manufactured the watches, I'm not sure who makes the movements at the moment because it's sort of a white label agreement, and I haven't had a chance to inspect a recent Tiffany watch case open. But there was a period, and unfortunately it was a bit of a tumultuous hookup when Swatch was making the watches for Tiffany's. Other than that period, I can't speak to where they came from. Okay, comments coming through.
What do we have?
We've got a comment from Watch Showed, a longtime viewer, saying, I'm not an offshore guy, but I think it is pretty cool. Edward Ledden is saying, the watch looks great on you, Brian. That's our friend from Sweden chiming in. And I can see Hachi is saying, ceramic case, don't drop it. You know, the AP ceramic has been tougher, I would say, than just about any other.
I mean, but when they break, and it's a whole to do. I'm actually dealing with a repair situation right now with a customer who has this exact same watch where the bezel completely cracked.
Really? He nailed it that hard?
Nailed it that hard. Bezel completely cracked, and now it's going through the replacement of bezel process, and, it's not cheap.
Yeah, I'll say this. I do think the AP ceramic is the toughest I've seen, but I've seen every single ceramic case break. Some are more prone than others. I think we're going to see a tapering of the Panerai Luminor family with that right angle between lug and case. We're going to see a tapering of ceramic production in that family.
And what's interesting, a common misconception too, is due to the toughness of the ceramic, a lot of times if you scrape it on metal, sometimes what may look like a scratch is actually a line of that metal leaving a residue on the watch. So I had a situation come in where there was a gray streak on the watch. We thought it was a scratch. Watchmaker got the watch, looked at it, said no, that's residue from metal, and was able to get around 95% of it off.
You'll see that a lot on the ceramized cases too, like the 339 composite. A pencil eraser, guys, is your friend. Okay, so a comment from Eric Nielsen. Tim, do you think this case shape is more shatter resistant versus a ceramic bathyscaphe or dark side of the moon? I've seen every single ceramic watch ever make fracture. I have not seen the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar fracture yet because there are so few out there. Someone will pull it off.
But they will.
Someone will pull it off.
And we'll see it on YouTube in 1,000 pieces.
Yes, that's no knock on the manufacturer. That's just the limits of ceramic. You need to know yourself before you buy a ceramic watch. Are you that guy who beats the crap out of watches? If that's the case, you probably want to go with some sort of steel that can be laser welded to repair your many dents. If you're the kind of guy who gets swirls, scratches, and scuffs and can't stand them, but never goes beyond that point, you do your diving at your desk, so to speak, ceramic is great for you. Living a domesticated life around home and office with the occasional scratch or scuff is where ceramic is at its best. If you want to go high impact, you need to go with metal, or you need to go with some sort of ceramized aluminum, where the worst case scenario is you chip the ceramic layer down to the metal core.
Or you just give 0 Fs and you just know that you're going to have to fix the watch at some point.
Yep. Bring money.
The Toot and Arrow Panerai I've had some issues with. And again, if you're tough, if you wear your watches rough and it's a ceramic watch, you're bound to hit it in that exact point at some time where there's going to be an issue.
And let me be honest with you guys, if you're not the type to routinely chip or shatter a sapphire, you're probably not going to be the type to routinely chip or shatter ceramic. So we talk a lot about the frangibility of ceramic.
I don't want to make it seem like they're too soft.
Every watch has got a sapphire crystal these days, and if you're not breaking that, you're probably not going to break a ceramic case. Yeah. So just know yourself. Know thyself.
Yeah.
Good advice then and now.
Should we go to the next watch?
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's do the, we'll do this Senograph first.
Okay, let me fuel it up just to make sure it's actually running. So here's the thing, guys. There are two types of FP Journe boutique exclusives. There are the boutique exclusives with rose gold cases and black dials, and then there are the black label boutique exclusives that combine a stunning tandem of platinum case with black dial. Since about 2008, Brian, why don't you explain how this system works?
Yeah, so the The red gold black dial pieces will come in for normal stock. These are boutique-only watches that, as a FP Journe Espace, we also are entitled to receiving those pieces. Black label pieces are a slightly different process. These are actually application pieces where the name of the recipient needs to be turned into FP Journe, along with a history of some of the other FP Journes that they've purchased in order to allocate the watch. This is very similar to the process that Patek Philippe has in order to obtain some of their more coveted watches. Black label pieces are always platinum with a black dial, and they are produced for FP Journe in probably the most limited quantities. Generally, it's no more than 3 per year of any given watch. Sometimes it's as little as 0. So this is the Centigraph in the black label variation. You know that this particular watch is being made no more than 1 to 3 times per year. And the reason why I picked this watch to bring it for the show is with the onset of the Centigraph being discontinued, I felt that this being a black label variation of the watch and the fact that the Centigraph is going to be discontinued, that this is just that sort of collectible piece that I think will be an asset in anybody's collection. Yeah, plus, it had a sick purple strap on it.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, this is a factory strap.
I love that.
That is an FP Journe factory strap. Gator on both sides. Look at the contrasting stitch. You can see it is a slight contrasting stitch. This thing is furiously fuchsia and beautifully glossy, and it's got the same pull tab easy release system that you see on a lot of Journe watches these days. But when was the last time you saw a double gator strap in this color?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the hallmarks of FP Journe straps is the double gator. It makes the strap softer, and you put a brand new FP Journe strap on your wrist, and it's like you've been wearing it for 10 years, even though it's brand new. And what I think is one of the more less known.
I want to show people how FP Journe and JLC tried to do the same thing with a different approach. But no, definitely finish up.
So the whole strap process with FP Journe, I think, is little known. I think a lot of people that buy FP Journe, they end up getting it on the black or brown strap that it comes with. But they have an entire personalization program for the straps that you can give them the exact measurement of strap that you want, where you want the holes, the colors that you want, and it really can change the look of a watch. You can take a watch like this that goes from extraordinarily dressy to a little bit more casual and fun.
I will say this, they also have optionally available for deep into 4 figures, the world's best clasp with a radial micro adjuster. Absolutely sensational. I highly recommend it if you're into Journe and you want to customize, have the toy no one else does. And that's in the context of a brand that still makes only 600, 900 watches a year. Let me show you something about how JLC and Journe accomplished the same purpose. So if you focus in on these 2 watches, you can see on the JLC, there are 2 mainspring barrels here. On the Journe, there's 1 central mainspring barrel. What JLC did is they ran 2 separate drivetrains off 2 separate power sources so that when the chronograph was engaged, there would be no loss of balance amplitude and no loss of timing precision. With Journe, he centralized the mainspring barrel, and he created 2 drivetrains in his own right, but he drove both trains for time and for the chronograph off the same barrel. So the result is that these are both Foudroyant chronographs designed to suffer no loss of amplitude with the chronograph running, but the difference is that on the Journe, because it's 1 mainspring barrel powering 2 trains, the power reserve goes from 80 to 24 with the chronograph running. So with the JLC, because it has 2 separate power sources, you double the draw on power, you double the power source. It has the same 50-hour power reserve whether the chronograph is engaged or not, but it's also thicker. And FP Journe personally told me he doesn't like my watch because it's too thick. So that's from the master himself.
So answering Adam J. Odell from the chat, Journe every single year releases how many watches that they made for the prior year, as well as the total number for each particular reference. So I have here that the full sheet on exactly what was produced. You are 100% correct. Journe did do 110 chronometric blues for 2017. To put it into perspective, the Centigraph Souverain in 40 millimeters, only 11 were made for the entire year of all variations. So 11 of this watch for 2017, not this watch, but all dial configurations of this watch in platinum were made. More than likely, only one or two of the Black Label were probably made for 2017.
Remember, guys, with 9 Journe boutique right now, because they can only make 2 of any given model per boutique in the Black Label series per year, the worst case scenario, if the floodgates has opened, at some point they had 10 boutiques, they might have made as many as 20 of these in 1 year. Worst case scenario. If they literally sold out the Black Label boutique edition at every boutique.
Cool fact, Octa Divine in 36 millimeter won for all of 2017.
And the
I mean, if
Chronomet
you
Optimum?
purchased the one watch in 2017, you got a one of one. It's not even one of one because they make more of them, but they only made one for the year.
How many Chronomet Optimum did they make of all varieties?
Chronomet Optimum of all varieties.
The connoisseur's Journe. Basically the Tourbillon Remontoir without the tourbillon.
How many do you think they made of all Optimums?
4.
16.
Really?
So 4 in red gold, 1 in 42 red gold, 7 in 40 platinum, and 4 in 42 platinum.
That's epic.
How about Octasport 42 millimeter titanium, 12 for all of 2017. Govberg sold 6 of the 12.
So, okay, let me think about this. The Vagabondage 3, they made 69 in platinum, they made 68 in rose gold, and they made 110 Chronomet bleu. So that's like a third of the entire production tied up in those 2 watches.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, when you think about just how scarce these watches are and they produce numbers like this, these are the times when I think that in a world where brands are producing $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 watches, when you're looking at a watch and you can say 7 of that watch were made for the year, it is crazy to me.
Yeah. So, and that's the amazing thing. Journe made like 650 watches this year, somewhere around that. And so you've often heard that number 900 bandied, and you imagine if a company says, we make up to 900 watches, you would imagine they made 900 watches, not hundreds less, because that was just their priority.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And everyone said, oh, they make 900 watches a year. I mean, they made 6 and change. It's crazy. And, again, there was a dial issue with the Chronometra Blue where there was a situation where dials cracked. So generally they produce around 190 CBs for the year. This year they'd only produced 110, so 90 of the watches were, 80, 90 of the watches were just, gone.
So the wait list just does this. It never disappears. Okay. Speaking of blue dials, why don't we pull one out that people can buy right now, actually, a watch I would buy if I weren't on a quest and a mission to buy the last grand complication. I've got the Perpetual, I've got the Tourbillon, I need a repeater, so this is not on the agenda.
And I brought this not to interrupt you.
No,
I brought this because I think that with the recent releases from SIHH, with them coming out with the Polaris and the Memovox limited edition, that this plays directly into that sort of, it was almost like an appetizer of sorts for what was to come. And I think that it shows that they took a look back at what was successful in the collection that did really well in order to help influence the current release.
I would even say that this is better than the current Polaris because, first of all, there's only 500 of them. Only the new Polaris Memovox is a limited series, and they're making 1,000 of those. They made 500 of these. The watch is also a bit of a fusion. If you look at the dial, you can actually see a familiar face from my show. The E877 Snowdrop that I own was the aesthetic inspiration for this 2016 boutique edition dial. Now, while they did take the dial design, they also innovated with several different blues. You note the seconds track outboard, the hour track, and then inboard, 3 different blues, 3 different finishes. So it's not a literal takeoff of the historic watch, and they gave it the 40mm steel Master Memovox case, so it doesn't look like the lugless cushion design of the older watch. It's a nice fusion of contemporary and vintage cues with elaboration and imagination, and it features a handsome Trieste-style strap. That's what they call this. It's actually an embossed pattern. It's not textile, though it looks like it, with a subtle contrasting stitch in blue, and on the backside you can see the natural grained calfskin to remind you this is a true leather strap. The master control geosphere on the caseback, 500 pieces, stainless steel, and this is caliber 956, so it sounds like a little alarm clock on your wrist, and I think I'm going to fire this one up because I've whetted your appetite. I show you a Memovox. I must let you hear the Memovox.
And one of the other perks of this watch, too, is that it comes in at 40 millimeters. I believe that the watch that was released at SIHH, is it 40 or 42?
The new Polaris is 41, 42, and 44. The standard automatic without a date is 41. All the others are 42, and then the chronograph world time is 44 in titanium.
Right, so this came in at 40, a little bit smaller. For me personally, this comes in at a better size. I also just love, again, as you said, just the brightness of the blue dial, the way that the almost nylon sports strap, takes what was traditionally a more conservative dressier watch, made it a lot more sporty.
It is a very sporty take on the Master Memovox, which has never been an overtly sporting watch. This has more of a sports casual thing, so you can do it with a suit. It'll work just fine.
Exactly.
But if you want to peel back the sleeves, this one's ready to rock when
And
you
you can put a Fagliano strap on just about anything. Am I pronouncing it right?
I think it's Fagliano.
Is it Fagliano?
It is.
Fagliano.
They're Argentine of Italian descent.
Yeah, you got to get that in there.
Exactly. So that mellifluous Italian accentation. And
there we go.
by the way, this thing's only wound about halfway. This alarm will go and go and go.
Are you going to throw this one?
That's on wood. No, this one doesn't have the compressor extreme case.
Yeah, that is true.
I wouldn't throw a watch that I didn't own, unless, well, I'm not going to name brands.
So there's been a lot of talk in the chat right now about the CB. So first point I'd like to make is I don't believe that the Chronometric Blue is going to be discontinued anytime soon. I think that it is a flagship of the brand. It is a mainstay. It's become very recognizable too. For those that haven't been introduced to FP Journe before, they know what the Chronometric Blue is. It is the first path into the brand, no different than a 5711. I think what draws people to the watch is the tantalum case, which is extremely difficult to work. It is actually one of the most difficult dials in all of watchmaking to produce. It is the single hardest dial of any FP Journe watch for the dial maker to make, and it is the most expensive dial for them to make.
And there's a mysterious allure surrounding this watch. When I went to visit Journe's case maker and dial maker, I wasn't able to record the polishing of the case, or I should say the finishing of the case, because it's not polished. I wasn't allowed to take pictures of that, and I wasn't allowed to take pictures of the creation of the dial. So you've got a case and a dial that are basically mystery machine components. And here's the amazing thing about the CB. It came out in 2009. The waiting list now is longer than ever, despite the years, and it's the rare instance of an entry-level model. Let's consider the Elegant to be a separate thing for now. They're actually remarketing it as Elegant by FP Journe. So let's just consider the mechanical watches. This is the entry-level model that is not a point of entry from which you necessarily jump off to anything else. This is objectively one of the most desirable models at any price in the catalog, to the point that you can easily imagine someone who already owns a Chronomet Optimum, vintage FP Journe, Tourbillon, repeating watches, and he would say, you know what, I need a CB for my collection. My next Journe after the Grand Comp is a CB. So it's not just a gateway watch, it's an essential addition
It's
to
what
a
the
Journe
5711 has become.
Yeah.
Almost. And, you have an interesting dichotomy going on, because what the 5711 represents and the CB represents, which are supposed to be pathways to the brand for a young collector to get into, have now become the apex. You have to be a big collector of the brand just to get the watch. And the CB is now going for over retail. It is, we're seeing them few and far between. We're getting less and less of them even in the pre-owned space. One of the difficulties too of the watch is that just how difficult it is to refinish tantalum. It's not something that our watchmakers can do, and I believe there's a proprietary finishing technique that FP Journe uses. And
It's death on tools, finishing of tantalum. Like, I would almost rather send it to Journe so the finishers don't have to buy new equipment. So comments coming in. Joshua Polanski saying he could have gotten a CB for $17,000 a while back, kicking myself. Don't worry, none of us saw this market, this bumper crop market for entry level.
We did.
And, well, yeah, we did. So
we did.
We bought up supply. But yeah, those of us who are on the actual buying and collecting side, we weren't looking ahead, and we didn't see these entry level watches becoming marquee pieces and big scores for established collectors.
So I'm going to answer Hellfire's question. Tim Bryan, opinions on the Patek Gondol 5024G. Pink dial, how pink is it? So it's a salmon dial.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that it's overly pink. I would say that, it's definitively salmon when you look at the watch.
Yes.
But I think that salmon is in. if you look at FP Journe, they use salmon. Patek Philippe uses salmon. Patek's most recent split-second perpetual calendar chrono instantaneous perpetual 5374. The most popular iteration of the watch, which we actually recently delivered, has the salmon dial. So I think that they're unique. They look great. I'm a big fan of the 5024G. I think that it's very hard to find great rectangular watches.
I would say just be aware, there's the 5024 and there's the 5124. Neither one of them wears that large, so try on a 5024 before you decide to pull the trigger. You might find that it's a little bit too petite for your tastes, unless you specifically like the vintage look. You like the watch that's maybe 1 to 2 sizes smaller than a contemporary dress watch. Try them both before you decide, because the 5024 is a tiny little thing.
Yeah, I mean, aesthetically, I prefer the 5124G personally. I just think that, I don't know, I think I like the case shape a little bit better.
I mean, I'll say this, guys. Look, I'm not going to try to be that counterculture. Blue is gorgeous, and though it's cliched and played out, I still like the 2015 version of the 5124G with the blue sunburst dial. Boom, I'm done. That's the 5124 I would want. Comment coming in from Edward Ledden over in Sweden. Thanks for staying up with us, Edward. About the 5074R black dial. First of all, we've got one. Second,
we do.
It is the best sounding Patek Philippe chiming watch, not called Grandmaster Chime.
Correct. So what's so great about the 5074 Rose is that it is a cathedral minute repeater, meaning that the gong on the inside goes around 1.5 times as opposed to just 1 time. So you have a much longer sounding gong, and it's got like a much deeper tone.
It's got a couple of other things on its size too. First of all, it's big. It's about a 42 millimeter watch if you actually measure it. As the calipers tell the tale, it's about 42 millimeters, which means it's pretty huge by Patek standards. I mean, a 5204 is a split-second perpetual calendar chronograph. It's 40.5 millimeters. So now this 5074 has a large volume to resonate, and although it doesn't increase the volume, the actual melodic quality, the tone and sustain, is helped by the rose gold case. Terry Stern has gone on record saying he thinks rose gold is the sweetest sounding repeater. And based on the performance of the 5074R that we have in inventory, I would say that's pretty much bang on. That's true.
I mean, the watch is absolutely amazing. And what I also love about the watch, it has that traditional Patek Philippe look to the dial. You know, it's not a more modernized take on the perpetual, similar to the 5208. It's got that traditional look, which I think it's got a more modern case with a traditional dial to it, and I just think that it makes for a great combination, especially in the rose with the black dial.
It's also a watch that had a pretty short run, and remember, the watch came out about 2002. The black dial in the rose case, I want to say, came about 2005, 2006. By 2013, it was all said and done for the model with, at the most a dozen made per year? And that's probably all metals.
I believe, and again, I don't know if this is true or not, but I think I read that the 5074 Rose with the black dial and the iteration that we have was only made in 2 or 3 examples.
I think it might have been...
Because one went at auction, and I think that it said that in the auction notes.
It might have been in the auction notes that only 2 to 3 examples have been to auction. Look, guys, there's a very good chance that if you Google a picture of a 5074 on the internet, it's going to be the one we've got, the one the auction house auctioned, because there are very, very few of them. We're at a point where photos on the internet are likely to display a vast majority of the watches actually made. We're not talking thousands of watches. We're not talking hundreds of watches. Maybe all 5074s ever made amount to 180 to 220 watches. That's all of them.
So we've hit the 3.5 minute overtime point, and we have I'd say the dessert watch, the creme de la creme. The fact that we could talk about a whole show on this watch is an understatement. So
are we going nuclear?
We're going nuclear.
Boom. We are carpet bombing you with a broad swath of rose gold, 47.5 millimeters. This is the Grubel Forsey double tourbillon, 30 degrees. You can see 2 tourbillon cages coaxially located at 6 o'clock. There's an inner and there's an outer. Okay, the outer tourbillon rotates in 4-minute circuits, Breguet style, and I mean A.L. Breguet, not Breguet the brand. And then the inner tourbillon rotates in 1-minute circuits. 4 mainspring barrels stacked, operating in series, provide 120 hours of power reserve. The movement itself is over 38 millimeters in diameter, which means the movement by itself is bigger than a traditional Rolex Datejust. It's also a huge watch with macro graphics on its flank. You can see it's inscribed, it's engraved, it's handcrafted inside and out, and the timepiece is 16.5 millimeters thick. It's a maze of metals and tones and textures and finish. It's built to be seen. That's why it's so large. It's not for the sake of bombast. It's so your eyes can touch and caress every single contour and surface. Note the plinth at center bearing the cannon pinion and the hands raised above the plane of the base plate itself. Note the architecture, and I do use the term architecture deliberately because it's like you're looking into the sculpted city of a master. This is like Brasilia. It's like a city designed on a single grand plan by a single architect. When you look at the case back, you can see the black polished bridge for the double tourbillon and the distinctive Greubel Forsey frosted surfaces with immaculately rounded off hand-laid anglage. Note the number of interior angles on the bridges, the toughest finishing assignment for a finisseur in the entire anthology of finishing arts in Swiss high horology. This is a movement that is immensely complicated, a watch produced in perhaps 3 to 6 examples per year at most from a company that makes 80 to 100 in total.
Yeah, so Greubel Forsey, we are actually an authorized dealer of the brand. This happens to be a pre-owned watch that we recently took in, retail $540,000. Tim gave all of the finer points of the watch. For those of you that don't know, and it was a fun fact-finding mission. As you delve deeper into the brand, you find more and more interesting things about it, is that Richemont actually owns 20% of Greubel Forsey. And, they're very much a sideline player. The 2 main watchmakers, the 2 founders of the company, actually control the destiny of the brand and make all of the decisions. But it is the single finest finishing of any watch on the planet. And I think that if you ask most individuals or watchmakers that work at the big brands, they would probably say the exact same thing. So, as Tim said, 80 to 110 examples are made for a given year. For those brands that have beat a tourbillon into a dead horse, this brand in particular keeps doing amazing things. Many of you may not have been aware of the double tourbillon. I think that the most popular watch that's currently made that most collectors are aware of is the GMT that features the world at the bottom.
Yes, and we actually have a cool video of that from my SIHH coverage, but I will say there's a little story behind this watch. Now, Greubel Forsey was established in 2004 by Robert Greubel and Stephen Forsey. Although they later received investment from Richemont, their personal background is with Audemars Piguet Renoir Papy, the ultra haute de gamme complication specialist within Audemars Piguet. So they struck off on their own, and their first innovation was the 30-degree double tourbillon. The double tourbillon, so that you have A, extra visual fireworks, because that's important, and B, the 2 tourbillon operating at different rates, canceling out the error relative to gravity. But there's more. There's the 30-degree orientation of the tourbillon. Why? Because if you read watchmaking texts, the average angle of a balance and a watch on the wrist is 30 degrees. By inclining the tourbillon at 30 degrees, they help to more precisely counter the effects of gravity in a wristwatch tourbillon application. Remember, the tourbillon was invented in 1795 by A.L. Breguet for pocket watches that sit at one orientation with respect to gravity. The result is that in objective third-party tests, Greubel Forsey's tourbillon has proven its chronometric precision and vanquished all comers. And if you read about the Museum of Leloc, the Horology Museum of Leloc's chronometry competition, the Greubel Forsey quadruple tourbillon has come out tops in a test among some of the toughest competitors in the watchmaking space. So not only does it look good, but this is real-world state-of-the-art advancement of chronometry as a pursuit in and of itself in a watch for which visibility and finish is co-equally important. No compromise. That's Grubel Forsey.
And I think that, when you're spending this level of money on a watch, I'm not going to name names or brands, but sometimes you just don't see or feel that level of investment. When you look at this watch, number one, if you hold this watch up to any other watch, I would say of the price point, this watch blows your mind. And I think that, again, it's hard to associate $550,000 with any object, but when you see the level of finishing on this watch, which I believe is thousands of hours of finishing that's required in order to even create a single unit, you can see what's going on here. I mean, for a brand to produce 80 to 110 watches for a given year,
working flat out.
Yeah, I mean, they cannot produce more. And then that is not that many watches.
And it's worth mentioning that they have 100 people working at Grubel Forsey in La Chaux-de-Fonds. And with 100 people working flat out, they managed to average about 1 watch per person per year. And that's flat out. So you're getting what you pay for. The only question with Grubel Forsey is, do you like their style, which is designed to bring the movement from the inside out, and they have to make it large, they have to make it segmented, they have to expand the case, expand the field of view. Some people are going to say, that's a bit too extravagant for me. And for them, they're not going to compromise in price or quality or weight list. They're going to go with the likes of a Carrie Voudelaine, Philippe Dufour, or R.W. Smith. Whereas those who want to go big, bold, who are willing to push the edge in terms of engineering and style, the avant-garde, they'll go with Grubel Forsey.
Yeah.
And there's no wrong answer.
And they've come out with some recent, U.S. editions in steel
Yes.
that are actually, I mean, it's funny to say, priced a little bit more aggressively at around 200,000, but they're finished, to the highest degree, and they actually are a little bit smaller on the wrist, which are probably a little bit more wearable every single day.
By the way, steel entry-level Grubel Forsey means about $180,000 to $200,000.
Yeah, and this even has some scratches on it too, ironically. I mean,
yeah, some dude wore this.
Yeah, this was worn. I mean, maybe you can show it off a little bit, but this thing has some scratches on it. I mean, I was blown away. I mean, sometimes you just think that these watches just sit in a box and collect dust, but somebody really took this thing for a test drive.
How are we doing in the chat box? Do we have any questions about Grubel Forsey?
Somebody wants to see it on the wrist.
Okay.
I'll throw it on the wrist while you answer some questions.
Cool, absolutely. So someone's saying a hot trophy wife for $540,000, better than a hot trophy wife. This adds value to your net worth once you acquire it, rather than splitting it somewhere down the line. This is a fantastic financial decision compared to that.
I guess you'd call it an appreciating asset.
JBO Surf saying, for that money, I'd take a 9912 GT3 manual and a Huracan Performante, so he'd buy a Porsche and a Lamborghini. I love cars, but I would probably put my money here. Of course, for that money,
smaller,
for $400,000, I'd have the JLC Ibris Mechanica 11 and $100,000 left to buy a car.
That's not crazy.
I'll tell you, my dream Grubel Forsey, if you want to open another tab and check it out, is the Grubel Forsey Tourbillon 24-second Contemporain Platinum with blue oxidized titanium dial. That's my dream Grubel. Although, you have to kind of say that every Grubel is the dream Grubel.
I mean, this thing is huge. It is huge.
It wears decently, though. It'll stay on my wrist. It'll also weigh me down as I'm like trying to escape sharks or pursuers, but they do wear well. They are designed with human beings in mind.
I can only imagine what I would do to this thing.
Yeah. Well, considering your Nautilus, I don't want to think about what you do to that thing. We've seen that watch on this show. That one's got tattoos. Oh, right. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us.
We really appreciate you guys all logging on. That's all that we have for tonight. My name is Brian. This is Tim. And this is the Watch Insider. Thank you guys for logging on.